Hello, good evening and a very warm welcome to the Hot Seat. This evening our guest is Mr. Gomin Daisiri, a senior legal man and refuses to be described as a constitutional expert. However, his expertise in the legal field is unchallenged. Good evening, Mr. Gomin.
And good evening, thank you for inviting me.
Absolute pleasure having you on the show. Let's start with this. What of the national government? Is it a national government?
Well, I would say it is very much a national government because it comprises of most of the parties, and also it has a few members in the opposition, that is the Tamil party TNA, which represents a district and is very ethnic in its complexion. But otherwise, it has been able to attract a fair number of people from different communities with different varying interests and from the two major parties. So it's a very strong government on the superficially, but I do not know how long it could last, because it has the two main competitors, that is the SLFP and the UNP, in the forefront. And I do not know how long that marriage can last, because of the fact that within 3 years, some of the members are going to realize from where are they going to attract the vote next time. Is it that those who voted for the opposition candidate or the opposition this time, would they have ever expected most of their members to be now holding cabinet portfolio? So 3 years down the line, there may be certain repercussions, but I think for the moment it's a strong, stable government numerically and also theoretically. Because the important thing is there is no clash of ideology. I don't think the UNP and the SLP ideology is far apart, except that they both believe that if the longer they can enjoy fringe benefits, the representatives, the happier they are.
That's almost well put, really, because I know you've mentioned this mathematically strong government, but on paper, ideologically different. However, in practice, ideologically, no difference is the line I take, because like you said, it's all about the money.
Money, and also I think one little additional factor, there has to be awe to the leader.
Yes, that is also true, but we have one leader who's actually got a proper mandate with a majority, and another who's only got a majority of seats in Parliament, but not the 113.
Yes, but possibly couldn't you also argue to say that Mr. Sirisena won his election primarily because of the UNP? I do not think it is the leader that attracts the vote. It is the party that attracted the vote for the opposition, and it is the leader and the Rajapaksas who lost it for the government.
I think I prefer to take the view that that is so in the parliamentary polls and in any of these provincial polls and so on. But when it comes to electing the president, yes, the party may matter, but the vote is very clearly given to one person. It's a fight between several, but it's usually between the 1 and 2.
You're right, personality counts, but personality along with the party that represents. Remember, this time it is a single party that put forward 2 candidates under different symbols.
Yes, but one was, you're right, one was a collection of 49 organizations, including political parties, backing President Sirisena, candidate Sirisena, and there was Mahinda Rajapaksa from his SLFP, or UPFA.
And how much better did this same combination, which Sirisena represented, did so brilliantly compared to what Fonseca, who had the same combination, failed dismally.
Yeah.
I think it's that 5 years made a world of difference, because...
Well, that too, but also I don't think that I wish to think that the people of Sri Lanka are not ready. They've had this vibrant democracy, and they weren't ready to hand their country into the hands of a military man. they are quite used to dealing with politicians, and they know when to chuck them out.
Yes, I think the Sri Lankan voting public is very enlightened.
Indeed,
they know what the opinion is, and they are not afraid to express it in the ballot.
That's right.
And they wait at the correct moment. That is what is great about democracy in this country. They wait for the correct moment to exercise it. But also, I think what is very important is the fact that I think for any president, any leader, 3 terms is too much. I think Mahinda Rajapaksa was able to accumulate this much of vote because of probably his having won the war. There is a gratitude factor still there.
And quite rightly so, I think.
Very rightly so, but there is a limit to it. I think people voted at local government elections, people voted at general elections, people voted at presidential elections overwhelmingly. But I think there is a limit, and now no more can you have a 3-term, but certainly even a 2-term is going to be rather difficult in the future, because the people have got used to the fact that even the best of the strongest of candidates who won the war can be defeated, like in Ukraine.
You described the Constitution as the amendment, the 19th Amendment, as stupid. In the context that Parliament couldn't be dissolved for 4 years and 6 months. Can you explain that to the public a bit?
Yes, it's a shocking feature really, because as it is, they have stopped any general election or any election. We don't even have by-elections under this constitution, so that the people will not be able to exercise their franchise. But what is worse is that even if you lose a money bill, even if you lose the budget, even if you lose a no confidence motion, there will have to be different combinations and permutations coming into effect where mavericks can come in, emerge.
So what you're saying is that no matter what happens in Parliament, these 225 people will be there.
And very happily so, because that is what they want.
So in short, they have got a guaranteed 4 years, 6 months, no matter what.
With all the perks and pension.
However, the President can appoint the Prime Minister.
President can appoint
the
Prime
Minister. So if they lose a bill or whatever, the President can say, right, I can't dissolve Parliament, but I can jolly well get rid of the Prime Minister.
Yes, he can, and he can even place a defeated candidate as the next Prime Minister.
Right. So he can do that.
Well, it seems, as J.R. Jawad said, he can do probably anything except make a change of sex.
Is this the start of an era where the people of Sri Lanka have acknowledged the contribution that Mahinda Rajapaksa has made, and then left him on the side, and they're going along, restarting? Is this the restart? Is this the renaissance, minus the Rajapaksas?
I do not know whether renaissance is the correct word, but there is a change for the better, and hopefully not the change for the worse, because I think in the international arena, I think it's very sensible that we do have domestic inquiries into war crimes. When there are war crimes, whereas you have to have an inquiry, and I do not know.
But at least you need to have an inquiry to establish if there were war crimes.
If there were or if there weren't.
Yeah.
Now, if there's an allegation, it's best that it is inquired into. And I just
But
cannot...
some of these allegations, I'm not taking anything away from anyone, but some of these allegations are deemed spurious. They are just allegations, they're kind of sour grapes. Some.
Not some.
Not all.
Not some, because I would say that the war crimes is quite different to all other laws. Because normally it's the judge or the jury who has to decide at the end of the case. Here in war crimes, war crimes came because of the Second World War. It's the victor's law. Always it's the victorious party that has the better of the law. But in Sri Lanka, it is the victorious party that is now being accused.
Correct.
But what is peculiar is that the final verdict, the mind must be that of the commanding officer and not of the judge. Now that is a peculiarity that is not there in any other court, because you think the judge makes the decision. Judge has to wear the cap of a of the commanding officer, and a war crime can be committed generally only under two conditions. That is, if there was a general intention to commit harm to civilians, or if there is excess of power used in carrying out the war. So I think on both those counts, Sri Lanka is very strong, because we have a very strong argument, because possibly we are the country that has carried out the largest human rescue operation known to mankind in recent times. We brought people out, we took them to areas, we restored democracy, we had elections, and the people voted against that government repeatedly.
Don't you think that that it is rather ironic that the Rajapaksas being heavily criticized, vilified for spending so much of money on PR and in hiring PR firms, and they appear to all fail spectacularly because they didn't highlight this very fact that you've just said.
That is the tragedy of this whole case, because if, for example, when war crimes were immediately after the war, if they had war crime inquiries here to see whether any of those allegations that were made during that short period was correct or not, we would have had none of these problems. We should have started it on our own, and that is what I was pressing the last government. Go ahead, have it soon, because we could have finished with it, because at that time, if you remember, India was backing us.
Yeah.
Because LTT killed, I don't think for the sake of love, but for the sake that they bumped off Rajiv Gandhi. If you remember, the American ambassador in Sri Lanka, who had been hostile, in fact, spoke very highly of having overcome terrorism. In that situation, the government dropped a very bad miscatch. They should have had inquiries straight away, and then they could have had results. And of course, inquiries must be held against in terms of natural justice. There must be transparency. But at the same time, I think even though this government is doing a very sensible, enlightened policy of having domestic inquiries, those domestic inquiries must not be manipulated as according to the wishes of other countries. Because we have law and order here, we have a system of law and a justice. So that it must be carried on that basis, not on some foreign interference is something that we should never permit at any time.
Do you think that was part of the whole appeal that the former president had, that he exuded this an ambience of or an image of power, that he was a very powerful man, and he stood up to all these foreign interferences?
I think that he earned respect, because if he bowed down to foreign interference, we would never have cleared terrorism. And if you remember, at that time we had the German foreign minister and the British foreign minister here in Colombo pressing us to stop the war. But we didn't, and I think we are today very fortunate. We enjoy peace, we enjoy democracy, not only we people in the north more than us, in the south. And we are very fortunate. But what happened was, there were allegations. We failed to inquire whether those allegations were truthful or not. We just couldn't just brush aside, place it up under the carpet. That is the mistake we made. We should have got down to inquiries right there, given the initiative, had it our own way. But, of course, transparency and natural justice are necessary. But unfortunately, we did nothing, and I think Mahinda Rajapaksa's biggest mistake was that there was a change of character with the winning of the war. I think all those billboards, the bloating of him, the kind of servile attention reversed by the cabinet of ministers, I think that had an impact. Because if you look at it, what a victory he made, electoral victory he won in 2009 after 4 years of war, which was quite different.
Don't you think that he should have taken a cue from those results? Because at the time he merely got, I say merely, but he got 58% of the vote.
58 is a substantial number.
Not compared to Mrs. Kumaratunga. She got nearly 63.
63, but she
didn't win a war. She only promised to end the war.
She missed a chance of getting assassinated. I think that this Sri Lanka, if you remember, Mrs. Bandaranaike, also sympathy is a very big factor in Sri Lanka.
But
I think that changed.
Wouldn't you have thought that he would have got at least 75% of the vote? Having won the war.
Remember, the North did not vote. That would have probably, if the North would have voted, I'm not saying the North would have voted against him, no doubt, even at that time, would have voted against him, it would have probably have come down to 58. But Mrs. Kumaratunga had the vote right round the country. But Mahinda Rajapaksa did not hold that amount of seats, because you would see that even in the South, he had alienated certain forces, because this was his second run. While Mrs. Kumaratunga, if you remember, contested on the eve of her near attempt of an assassination by the LTT.
As we come towards the end of our program this evening, I want to take you to something that's rather current. And this is to do with the Attorney General, who seems to have made all sorts of noises, not rather acceptable to the people. One of them is a very contentious subject, because everybody seems to know the answer excepting the Attorney General. And that is that KP there can't be any charges against him. Every person I've met on the road has an opinion on that, and they say that this man's missed the boat. He can't see what it is. Surely everybody knows that KP was an LTT man, but here we have the AG apparently saying that he can't bring any charges against him. Why?
Well, there are two very interesting statements in yesterday's papers where the AG set out his position, and I cannot understand, he blamed the media for pressurizing him to hold show trials. Now that's a very serious allegation, and I think there's a duty on the part of media to respond and point a finger at him and ask him, name who has done this and what are the show inquiries that we have asked.
Yeah.
Then at the same time, the Association of Lawyers for the Attorney General's Department gives a very wishy-washy statement and says that there are two stages in an inquiry, and stage 1 is different to stage 2. Now what I would like to say is, as far as KP or any of these avant-garde or all these matters, Karuna, all these matters, there are two main considerations. One is that there was so much of loose talk, speculation before elections and during election time. It harmed certain candidates, it harmed certain people, and after that there's a total change of outlook. Now, Attorney General must be more responsible. He must look at issues not in a political sense. What has happened is the Attorney General Department has become politicized, and they just allow things to drag on, allow to win political favor, because if you see, the current trend is Attorney Generals get into the Supreme Court, Attorney Generals from Supreme Court judges are given retirement benefits. So that is a bad thing. As far as KP and Pilihan and Karuna are concerned, one has to also take into account the fact that we would never have won the East, we would never have won the West, if not for the defection by Karuna and Pilihan.
In which case, shouldn't the former president and his team have made a very public and official sympathy line and said, we would like to officially thank them for this is what they did, and we will not be bringing any charges against them? Isn't that what they should have done?
They certainly should have taken action against Karuna for having killed so many policemen. Indeed, and more so.
So it seems to me that President Rajapaksa...
But those are matters that one has to take into consideration. You've got to balance the thing. On one hand, if not for the defection of Karuna, the East would not have fallen so easily.
But then Ranil Wickremesinghe will claim credit for that.
I mean, if he's entitled to some credit, he should also get it. But I do not know whether he effectively carried on it to the logical conclusion which Mahinda Rajapaksa did. But even with regard to KP, one must be mindful just as much as he's an offender, he was a gun carrier, he was an arms dealer, he was everything that LTT was stood for. But at the same time, one has to be mindful that after the operations, he did succeed in bringing a lot of information to the intelligence services about LTT activities post-war. So in these matters, there has to be a certain balance, and that is something that the AG is best fit to do. But the AG does not do that. He takes one stand and then goes on the reverse.
Yeah, rather very odd. Let me ask you this about the AG. Now he's said that he can't be indicting or prosecuting the former Defence Secretary, and this matter into Lanka is being laid aside because the CID says that on his advice they're not going ahead. Now, we have the Presidential Commission of Inquiry also looking into this thing. What happens if they say, well, we think that there is a case to answer here? Can this matter be brought again to court?
It can be brought before, may not be in a court of law because the Attorney General is the Chief Prosecuting Officer. But
can I bring a private plaint against them?
You can. And not only that, even it can be a charge before a Presidential Commission because...
On what grounds, Mr. Gomin, can I bring a private plaint against this company?
If you think that there has been a fraudulent mishandling of public wealth, public finance, state property, then...
But I think that there has been perhaps an abuse of power, where the directors of this company, this Lanka business, have acted sort of ultra vires, and they've gone and done all sorts of things which only a sovereign state can do, and they are not a sovereign state. They happen to be owned in its entirety by the sovereign state. So on what grounds can I?
Well, you can bring grounds on criminal charges, but there's something more favorable to you. You can bring in an action for excess or abuse of power under writ jurisdiction, or you can bring a fundamental rights case, which I think is the fastest remedy available to get on track. But I think if there is such a case, if a private individual would like to present a case, I think the strongest would be to bring a writ for excessive or abuse of power.
I must say thank you very much for having joined the hot seat, and we look forward to seeing you on our network once more sometime soon. Thank you very much. Thank you.